I just flew halfway around the world to Shenzhen, China. Dude, this is crazy. There's like electronics everywhere. To get exclusive behind the scenes footage of how the Nebula X1 Pro projector is built from the ground up. Yeah, this is definitely taking me back to my childhood. I always wanted to build cool stuff like this. From how these lenses are manufactured. So 48 minutes in total, but there's a lens coming off the line every 4 minutes then. To the optical engine assembly, where they add the little RGBs themselves. Liquid cooling system on top of the optical engine. Do other projectors have liquid cooling systems? All the way to the final production line, where Anker even let me try my hand to see if I could put one of these X1 Pros together. Oh, they made me a little sign? Bolt tightener in chief? Oh, I don't know, man, that's a lot of pressure. And stick around to the end of the video where I'm gonna show you some wild torture tests to make sure the X1 Pro arrives safely and lasts a lifetime. If it can handle a fall from that high up, I don't know what else there is to do to it. Let's hit it with a baseball bat. I'm kidding. So stick around as we do all this here in China right now. So I said I'm in China, but where exactly am I? Anker is headquartered in Shenzhen, which is part of the Greater Bay Area of China. This area, roughly the size of West Virginia, houses over 87 million people, with large cities like Hong Kong, Shenzhen, and Guangzhou to name a few. That's the population of California, Texas, and Florida all rolled into a pretty small area. And to get to the first factory, we had to travel from Shenzhen to Zhongshan over this super cool new bridge and tunnel that spans over 30 kilometers, something I'd never seen before. We had to go there because that's where the lenses for the Nebula X1 Pro are made. But I can't just go in with my street clothes because it's a clean room made to keep the dust out and the lenses clean. So in order to go into the clean room, I have to get all kitted up like this. This right here, unacceptable. So I'm gonna go through this 12-step process, and here we go. Ready? Boom. All right, now I'm rocking the full suit here. It's kind of stylish. I think I might start rocking this outside of the factories, but I think I'm good to go. Okay, first up we have lens production. Now, there's a 14-element all-glass lens inside the Nebula X1 Pro projector. And what we have right here is the most important lens, the one that you see tilt up and down in the other video that we made on the X1 Pro. And the process is pretty unique, actually. So first off, we have a mold, a lower and an upper mold that come into position. This is all automated too, which is really cool. And they just take a regular piece of glass, I'm sure there's specifics to it, but then a machine comes in and actually places that piece of glass inside the bottom mold. Then the machine makes sure that the lens is positioned properly inside the two molds before it puts it on a conveyor belt that actually takes it from one machine to another machine that's connected, where there's a 12-step process that takes 4 minutes per step. So that's like 48 minutes in order to produce one lens. And what that does is it's going to heat the lens up to a specific temperature and go through all 12 steps in order to make that lens the exact shape it needs to be, which is like an aspheric lens, a very complicated lens. So it'll just go inside that mold from one step to the next, heating it up, shaping it properly, and then to cool it off before it comes out on the other side completed. And then it goes back to this front machine where then they take the molds apart and the final aspheric lens is picked up and set with the after lenses. So really cool process. And the reason that the Nebula X1 Pro needs this specific lens is because it makes the image much sharper. It has a very wide viewing angle and it has very low distortion. So there's a lot of thought and effort put into this product here. And that's kind of the general sense that I'm getting in being in this factory in general, because this factory can make over 800,000 lenses in a month, which goes to show that the manufacturing here in this one factory in this one city in China is almost mind-boggling how advanced it is and how many machines are here and how much thought and energy goes into producing products that you guys love, including the X1 Pro. But obviously the X1 Pro is more than just a single lens, right? Or even 14. So let's move on to the next factory where we'll see them put this 14 all-glass lens array together and some of the other components that's inside. Luckily for us, the second factory wasn't far. This time we got to see people actually assembling some important pieces of the X1 Pro, and I even got to put some work in. But unfortunately, it was another clean room, so I had to get suited back up. All right, so now that I have my clean suit on, I can show you guys where the magic happens, because we have right here a finished assembled unit that has 3 really important components to making the X1 Pro projector look awesome. I mean, we have an optical engine, we have an entire lens array array system, and then we have liquid cooling as well. All of this is assembled in this factory that we're standing in right now. And I think this is really cool and unique. So I want to show you this whole process, starting with this optical engine, which, doesn't look like this to start. So let's show you that. So first, we just have the housing that's been made for the RGB. So we'll show you that as they're working on it. First off, they're putting on little mirrors in order to redirect the lights, because once we're going to put the RGBs in there, you obviously need something to direct the light into the right areas. It looks like there's actually a couple different people working on those mirrors, and then we get to what's probably one of the most important pieces, which is the RGBs. So they're actually adding 3 different lighting sources here, RGB of course, and once those 3 RGBs are added to the optical engine, then they test it against the wall here to just make sure that all 3 of the units are working. It's just a yes or no test. And then once the RGBs are together, then now they can connect the 2 different pieces of the optical engine here. They have one that has those mirror system in it, and then obviously the RGBs, and then it'll send that light down the path through this entire system and then out through the lenses, which we're going to show you in a second. Now here are some internal lenses that go inside the optical engine, and they even let me try my hand at putting one of these together. I'm going to try to make it look like this, so it goes this way. Yeah, okay, that's 2. Oh, look at that one. That's a square. I like that. This one's got to go this way. All right, I got the 6 lenses in, but now I got to put glue on them. All right, ready? We'll try with this one. I think that's it. Okay, I'm not very good at it. To be honest, I'm not sure I got glue in the right spots, but yeah, not too bad. And now it's time to put it in the UV curing station. But I think they're probably gonna have to junk this one I made. In fact, they gave it to me as a gift, which is very respectful, but probably also because they were not gonna use it for production. Oh. Now, we have those 2 pieces of the optical engine, and over here, we're gonna add a 3rd, which is actually gonna be the DMD chip that's inside of this. That's gonna kind of be the brains of the operation. So now we're gonna start with just that chip alone and put that in a 3rd housing that's gonna come back down the line here and be attached to the optical engine. So we have various people inside a super clean room that's pressurized so that the air, you can feel it, the air can only come out of here. No other pieces of hair are gonna go inside, and it's just gonna make sure the end product, your projector, is gonna have no dust or anything inside. And then he's gonna hand it over to someone else that's gonna put it together with the other 2 very important parts. So let's explain those. And this is the second part. This is the lens array module in its entirety, completely built with all the motors and everything on it. But let me tell you how this got put together. This has 14 different glass lenses inside of it, and we got to see the process of putting them all in here one by one, going down their assembly line. And as they were adding lenses, we got to see how inside this, there's different lenses that have these motors on them that then turn as it's focusing, increasing size, utilizing the dynamic iris, all working together to produce the image that you see. But it's just something that's pretty incredible when you get to see behind the scenes all the different people that are working on this, and then at various stages testing to make sure that the electrical signal is working properly, that it's going to pass that test and move on to the next person. And then they tape it up, put some more of the motors on, get it to this point, and then here we have the finished product, which is the 14 all glass lens array. And during the process, they take it into a room and actually hook it up to a projector, showing images to make sure that it meets the 4K standard. And you have a guy in there really zeroing in on how good it looks to make sure it's perfect. He's got to have fantastic vision, I'm sure. He probably gets his vision checked on a regular basis. And then we arrive here at the finished product, and honestly, it's pretty cool to see how this is made. And I know that this is very important in leading to how good the picture quality looks. So now we're back to where all 3 parts come together. As you can see, we're putting on the lens array system onto that optical engine, and then they're actually adding a liquid cooling system to this as well, which I think is really neat. I know most people in the computer world would love a good liquid cooling system on their GPU, but I don't know if anyone would expect that inside of a projector like this. But that's actually really cool because you want to make sure that everything stays cool and works through the lifespan of the projector. And then once all 3 pieces are put together, they're going to run it through some tests to make sure that it functions properly. The first one is actually a sharpness test. So they're going to make sure that everything's aligned. And then after that, they're going to do brightness testing as well, which obviously is important. You want to make sure that every single one of these is exactly 3,500 ANSI lumen. And then lastly, they have a test for distortion to make sure that everything is aligned optically. And then once the optical engine module is functional and passes all the tests, then we got to button it up with a few zip ties because nothing says finished product like some good wire management. So all those visual components of day one are important, but they wouldn't do much without the circuit boards of the X1 Pro. Just think of your computer or your cell phone. All these products have a motherboard or circuit board that's like a roadmap for electricity, connecting parts inside the electronics so they can work together. And for that, we have to travel 7 hours to the Fujian province for day 2 to see how the circuit boards are made. So we're on the SMT floor, surface mount technology, which is the new way to create circuit boards. And the Nebula X1 Pro has like 20 different circuit boards in that connect everything together and run the entire projector. If you remember on the lens array and the optical engine, there's a bunch of wires coming off, and this is where it connects to. And we got to see one of these being created, starting with the actual PCB itself, the printed circuit board, where a machine takes the exact board needed and add the solder paste or glue to the entire board and get it ready for all the different pick and place machines to add all the components needed for the board it's creating. And I've only seen like 3D printers before, so to see a machine like this kind of looks similar but just doing much more complicated work and then sending the product down the assembly line from one machine to the next is extremely impressive and just underscores how much technology goes into the things that we use every day. And this is a pretty automated process, but there are multiple quality control checks along the way. We have machines looking at photographs of the board itself. We have people even checking 3D models to make sure that the solder's on correctly, and even x-rays that look inside to make sure that all the connections are accurate. All of the work done on this floor leads to the end, with the result being a printed circuit board. I was even fortunate enough to hold one of the 20 different circuit boards inside the Nebula X1 Pro. And as we were checking it out, we noticed that we could see the different speaker connections and subwoofer connections and LED lights. So very cool to see that we were holding something that's inside of your X1 Pro. And they seemed very interested in showing me the actual chip on board this PCB. So we put it under the X-ray to just see how many connections go just to that microchip. There's over 100 different connections. I thought that was pretty interesting and just underscores how important and impressive this process is in the production of the X1 Pro. Now, once we have the entire projector module connected with the printed circuit boards, the optical engine, and the lens array, it's time to test it out before we get to final assembly, because it's not going to do you much good if it's not functioning correctly. So they run every single projector module through a variety of tests, including calibrating the white point so all the projector's colors look like the creator intended when you're watching content. They also test the gravity sensor inside each unit by testing the module on the same balance table to make sure the G sensor is understanding the horizon before they lock it in. And they also have tests for keystone correction to make sure the shape on your wall is going to be accurate, one for time of flight testing so the projector can calculate time and distance from the screen, and of course overall focus correction. They even engineer their own equipment for these tests, because how else are you going to get good results, right? So that's pretty awesome. Does anyone else notice that they're using the Declaration of Independence as the text to check the focus of these projectors? I thought that was pretty interesting. Maybe it was just because they had an American guest, who knows? And after all this testing, if the optical engine isn't perfect, then they just take it out and replace it with a new one and start the entire process over. After all that testing, each projector module is ready for the most exciting part of this process, the final product assembly line. So here we are on the final assembly line of the X1 Pro, and I think this is probably the coolest part of the entire process. So let me walk you through what's going on. So the first step is actually putting the retractable power cord on the base of the X1 Pro. Then the next step is putting the wheels on, which is obviously important for making this very portable. I like that they put the little blue booties on. It keeps the wheels nice and clean. Then the next step is putting the frame inside and then a subwoofer inside of that. This is a really cool ported dual subwoofer design and gives you a total of 160 watts. Once I had this in my hands, I knew I had to try installing one myself. And they even gave me my own little sign, Bolt Tightener in Chief. Now, I'm not sure I'd be good enough to work on this assembly line, but let's move on. Then the next step is taking that projector module that we've been talking about and putting it on top of what looks to be the subwoofer, but it's actually on top of the frame that bypasses the subwoofer. So if you crank up the volume, you're not going to have to worry about any picture quality issues. Now on the other side, it's all about those extendable speakers, which I think are the standout feature of the X1 Pro. A very high quality 7.1.4 system with 4 main speakers and a sub that I'll demo at the end. Each front speaker has a center channel, a left or right, a surround speaker, and then an up-firing speaker on top with a really nice finish to it. The rear speakers have a forward-facing and then an upward-firing channel. Each of the speakers have 4 little rubber feet, so you can place them pretty much anywhere. And as cool looking and great sounding as they are, I did have some concern about the mechanics and longevity of these little arms that the speakers go on, since they'll move in and out so frequently. But I got to see that they're made with high-quality metal parts and tested to 20,000 reps. I think I've extended mine like 20 times, so it looks like I'll have a ton of life left on them. Now there's there's little motors that make those arms go in and out, but it's good to know that they have sensors on them. So if you're retracting those speakers in and it feels pressure, it's gonna stop before pinching your kid's fingers. Next is the housing for the two rear speakers. For those of you who've seen our other video, you know that they go in the back of the actual unit, and they've actually made one upgrade since we got our unit, which is now they have a lock for those back speakers to assure that they're never gonna fall out. Now on the other end, they're assembling the outer panels. Lots of little accessories. One importantly is an upgrade from the original design, which locks those front speakers in once they're retracted. This wasn't part of the original design, but I think it's a great addition. The next step is the assembly of the front panel that has the little lens cover that slides up and down. And then the last step on this side is putting that little panel together that houses the two microphones and the remote. Now the first generation of this didn't have a light. I'm so glad they added that feature, because if you're watching this in a dark room, super helpful. And then we come around to the other side of the line where they're putting that rear speaker assembly on top of the projection module, and we're 3/4 of the way done. Then the last couple steps start with putting the two side panels on, the retractable handle, which comes in super handy for transportation. And then the last step is putting on that lid that houses the microphones and the remote. Anchor even gave me a second opportunity to try to earn my spot on the line by putting on one of these covers myself. Now all I had to do is put 6 screws in, but these are small and hard to hold on to, and the gloves really don't help either. But eventually I got them all in, and the X1 projector was ready to roll off the assembly line and go to final testing. First up, we have this torture chamber for the projector, and to be honest, for us. Let's take a moment just to listen. Now what's going on here is they're actually testing the subwoofer, the projector itself, and the little arms for the speakers on the side to make sure that all of the stuff is functioning at once. And they're gonna be doing this to every projector for multiple hours, and there's like 50 projectors in here. I definitely wanted to get out of this room. And it's nice to see they test every projector, but they also run the prototypes through a gauntlet of tests before production as well. And lucky for us, they showed us some of these tests. The first was a saltwater test, where they put the prototype inside an incubator and spray salt water on it for 48 hours, sort of simulating a rainy day at the beach. Now I'm not sure you're gonna take this outside the beach for 48 hours, but hey, you could. Now on the other end of the reliability is the dust test, because if it's not raining, maybe you have some dust in the house. And the prototype that they showed us was absolutely covered with dust. And the point of this test is to make sure none of that dust gets inside of the projector. And then there was a couple extreme mechanical reliability tests, including a shake test. And I mean, man, they really shook it for a good amount of time. And then they dropped it from pretty high up multiple times. And then they put it in extreme heat and extreme cold, and then back and forth. And if they can do all this to the projector and there's no issues, then what are you guys gonna do at home that's gonna be worse? They also test the RF wireless speakers, because that's really important too. There are a lot of wireless speakers out there that have a lot of interference, but to be honest, I've had no issues with the X1 Pro. But don't worry, that's all just for the prototype. For those of you who purchase an X1 Pro, that's rolling safely down into the packaging department, where they take off the little blue booties, add the little stickers so you know which speaker goes where, and get it all boxed up. And the reason I'm telling you this is because they did show us one last crazy test, which is to protect this entire projector and packaging in case your local delivery guy doesn't have the best hands. Now that probably happens more often than we think, so I'm glad that Anchor tests that out too. Now this has been such an eye-opening experience, and I'm so glad I got to be here. But what makes the X1 Pro such a good projector? The third day was all about us seeing and hearing the final product. Now normally this part of the process is sort of hush-hush. I mean, I've been in these sorts of rooms before, but I've never been allowed to film. And it was really cool to see the Nebula X1, which is the same projector, up against another extremely expensive projector and a reference TV that I absolutely love. In a blind test, I guarantee you couldn't tell which one of these two projectors cost $30,000. And it's not the Nebula X1 Pro. And I got to spend time with the actual Nebula Master, the guy that made the Nebula Master mode for these projectors. He's got decades of experience in calibrating different types of displays, and it was cool to get a behind the scenes look at his craft. And on the flip side, we got to also experience the great sound of the X1 Pro. And they started by taking us into a sound isolation chamber, where they showed us all the different frequencies. And even having the door open changed some of the results, so we had to shut it and get locked in. It was so quiet in there, maybe too quiet, but the next stop was the actual listening room. Why don't we take a minute to listen to how good this thing sounds? I really think it's worth it. Yeah, I kind of felt like other speakers were on. It sounded like all of these speakers were on, but I know that they're not. They're not even plugged in. But for 4 speakers here and then this sub, so really 5 different speakers, what, I think it's like 14 channels. That is quite a lot of sound in this room. I think what's most interesting is when the sound is kind of like in the middle of the room, when it's between the 2 speakers, the front and the back there, you really get immersive sound coming from the side that sounded like it was coming from different speakers over here. And then the other really impressive thing is the bass here too. And we actually have the enclosure here, which has 2 5.25 inch little subwoofers there that's ported there, but this is the unit itself. It's pretty impressive that this is making so much bass inside of the X1 Pro. So yeah, it's really impressive to me that all of that sound and picture quality comes from, you know, an all-in-one contained unit like this with a projector, an entire audio system that you can just roll around wherever you want to go, and at the price you're getting it on the Kickstarter. That's really impressive, actually. So great picture quality and great sound. That really wraps it up. I want to thank Anker for inviting me out to their headquarters and various factories. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get behind the scenes and see how the X1 Pro was put together, all the way down to the warehouse where I'm standing in front of 200 units ready to ship to the first Kickstarter backers. And man, they're lucky because I think this is a no-brainer. Such a great product, and if you get it while the Kickstarter's going on, it's such a great price. So if you want to get yours today, go to the links in the description below. And while you're down there checking them out, make sure to comment and let me know what your favorite part of the video was. And make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you know anyone that might want one of these, forward this video because a lot of my friends have reached out and told me how cool this product looks. See you guys on the next video.